Today we are going to have an introduction of object-oriented analysis and design course. First, we need to discuss about object-oriented principles, and the main object-oriented principles are encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So coming to the encapsulation, we are having an information hiding interface and implementation, standardization, access control mechanisms. Coming to the inheritance, we are discussing about hierarchy, reusability, extensibility, expressive power, reflects many real-world problems. And coming to the polymorphism, one forms of same function, abstract methods and abstract classes can be used under polymorphism. First, we go for having an introduction of object-oriented programming, where it mainly supports the objects and the classes. Whenever we need to have an interaction with one another, we make use of an objects, and how we need to describe about an object. Generally, whenever we take any physical entity, we always describe any physical entity using the characteristics like has a, or coming to its behavior, can do. Objects must have unique identity like basketball, blue ball. Coming to the example, we consider a ball, and a ball generally, the main characteristics of the ball are color, diameter, and these all things we can go for having a data declaration. Coming to the methods, which is called as a behaviors, as I said, we have a throw, we have a bounce, we have a roll, depends upon the characteristics and depends upon the ball types. We go for changing the methods of throw, bounce, roll, or all the behaviors. Coming to the classes. A class defines the general nature of collection of objects of same time. The process creating an object from a class is also called as an instantiation. Every object is always an instance of a particular class. There can be many instances of objects from the same class, possibly with different values for different data. This is one example. The class name here is a rose, where once we apply the characteristic called color, we can go for having a red rose, we can go for having a blue rose, or we can have a pink rose. Likewise, depends as the varies, we can go for having a different object references through the characteristic called color. Coming to the hierarchy. So, whenever we need to discuss about the hierarchy inheritance, inheritance generally speaks about inheriting the features from one class to the another class. Example, we consider an inheritance hierarchy. We consider an example called food hierarchy, where food generally comprises of eat. Food we generally eat. So eat is a behavior here, and we can go for inheriting these eat method to different classes called ice cream, spaghetti, and pizza. So these are the three varieties of subclasses where we can derive from the food base class. And each of the class will be inheriting the eat method from one class to the another class. And we consider another object, any object considered to the Java hierarchy, where you use equal function, clone function, toString function. It just illustrates the subtype of polymorphism. Coming to the object, we can go for having a salary, where we can compare the salaries, where you can convert the numeric salary into the string, and where we can go for performing the clone operation. Similarly for automobiles, similarly for the family tree. So all these three behaviors can be inherited to the salary class or the automobile class or the family tree class. Coming to polymorphism. As we considered in the previous example, we considered a class food. What can you do with the food? What does it have? We need to question ourselves with the physical entity. What are its behaviors? What are its characteristics? And we have considered the food items like ice cream, spaghetti, and pizza. How will you eat these? Invoke each operation on these objects. Depends upon the spaghetti we use, one type of eating, pizza we use fork and knife, and ice cream we make use of ice. So the function is same, but we go for supplying the parameters varies from one class to the another class. So each operation is polymorphically invoked depending upon the type of item it is to be invoked on. And coming to the requirements and analysis method, we always follow the steps. Called functional requirements represented by the use cases. Classes always discovers. We can consider any examples like CRC cards, static analysis representation by the class diagram, dynamic analysis by the variety of integration methods. Either we can go for interclass and the state diagram for intraclass. As well, we can discuss about the component diagram showing various modules, deployment diagram showing the platforms and machines we are used. So these all we go for having a description. Use case analysis. Whenever you go with a new problem, we need to always go for use case analysis to be involved for any problem. You consider any application, we start reading and analyzing the specifications as well as discussing the system with potential users of the system. Actors of LMS, library management system, are identified as librarians and borrowers. Librarians directly interact with the system, whereas borrowers indirectly interacts with the system through the librarian. We consider an example of your use case diagram. So the borrower, which is the logical view of your system, can go for making the reservations of your books, can borrow the item, or if you already have made the reservation, you can go for removing the reservation, and once the purpose is survived, you can go for returning the item book to the library. So this is how you are going to represent the behaviors of the borrower librarian. And coming to the use case for the librarian, what are the various behaviors that librarian can be invoked is librarian. If any book enters into a library, he can go for adding the title, he can go for adding the item, he can add, if any new borrowers are there, they can go for adding the borrower, or they can update the details of the borrower or remove the details, or you can go for removing the updated title. So all the administrative setup will be done by the librarian, which manages the books, which manages the library, which go for managing the entire library management system by the librarian. Use cases for the borrower and the librarian. So as we have discussed previously for the borrower as well as for the librarian, we have categorized here the use cases for the borrower or borrow item, return item, make reservation, remove reservation. Coming to the library, we go for add title, update or remove related to the book. Related to the borrower, we can go for adding the borrower, update or remove the borrower. Add item, update or remove the item like CDs, DVDs, any online e-materials. You can do all the updations by the library. Suppose, example we can consider, a title may have many items, a book may have many copies. Titles may be books or magazine titles, persistence, all use cases always involves the database access. And once we finish drawing our use case diagram, we can go for having an outline of what are the preconditions required for our use case diagram as well post conditions of our use case diagram. Coming to the preconditions, items may or may not be reserved. Coming to the post conditions, borrower gets the items, database may be updated. And coming to the exceptions, title may not be available, item not available if it is not available in our database. So if consider some actions to the case 1, if the borrower has not reserved the items, a title is identified, an available item of the title is available, the borrower is identified, the item is borrowed, transaction is done on a particular item, a new loan transaction is registered. Suppose if the borrower has a reservation for the item, the borrower is identified, the item is borrowed, new loan is registered, reservation can be removed. And this is a simple example of your CRC. We have a weather station and we have a responsibilities. We go for selecting 24 hours, the current weather report. We can go for having a set date and time, display the current temperature, wind, pressure, humidity. We can go for displaying high and low temperatures each and every minute, display the trends in the temperature, pressure, time, wind, humidity, etc. And finally, you can go for calibrating the things. Coming to the user interface, what are the necessity in responsibilities of your user interface is we need to go for input data, date, input time, input selection, and you can go for displaying the data. Right, these are the responsibilities. Now, for all these responsibilities to be handled, we can go for using the collaborators like keyboard, display, and these 4 parameters called temperature, wind, pressure, and humidity to display the data related to temperature, wind, pressure, or humidity. Thank you for listening. Our PPTs.